How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Bears Baseball Network, and we have a new home run leader. That's right, Liam Schreiber with an absolute home run barrage this weekend. 3 on the weekend gives him the lead on the season. He's up to 8, and he surpasses Vince Dalton. And I'll tell you what, it was a bunch of homers this season, or this weekend rather. Again, Liam Schreiber with 3. Harrison Blebaum, our 10U Floyd player, he hit his first career home run. So a huge congratulations to Harrison Blebaum. Parker Els homered, Landon Nickerson homered, Austin Arnaiz for 11U Floyd hit a homer, Ethan Mon for 14U Williams hit his first Bears home run, Alex Meseth of 14U Driscoll homered, Wyatt Yount hit his second homer of the year, Brody Reddinghouse of 14U Driscoll homered, Vince Dalton had 1 on the weekend, so a little bit of a slow weekend for Vince. And Tyvor Zazaweta hit his second home run of the season. So a lot of home runs on the weekend to speak of. And let's take a look at our home run leaderboard. Liam Schreiber now leads with 8. Vince Dalton in second with 7. Parker Els has 6. Landon Nickerson has 5. Brendan Bass, Luke Warren, and Landon Meyer all have 4. And Carson Donsbach has 3. And of course, we have a bunch of guys with 2 and with 1. So, unfortunately, many of our Bears teams did not get to play Sunday or didn't get to finish their tournaments due to rain. We did have a few who did finish their tournaments. 11U Floyd won their tournament this weekend. They went 3-0, but maybe even more impressive, they did not allow a run all weekend long. 3 games, 0 runs allowed. An absolutely fantastic weekend for their pitching staff, which is looking like one of the best in the organization. Callan Beerling put an exclamation point to their pitching weekend with a 6-inning, 0-walk, 11 strikeout start. That was in their Sunday game, and what an absolute crazy weekend for 11U Floyd on the mound, and of course winning their championship altogether. That is their 3rd championship of the year in just 4 weekends, so a fantastic start to the year for 11U Floyd. 12U Floyd won their 3rd straight championship. They have an 11-game win streak going on, and their pitching staff was also very impressive. Each of the 4 12U Floyd starting pitchers took a no-hitter into the 4th inning. So only one of them actually finished the no-hitter, but very impressive that 12U Floyd did not allow a hit in the first 3 innings all weekend long this weekend. What a fantastic weekend for them. That is their 3rd consecutive championship win and their 3rd in 4 weekends on the year. 14U Driscoll was the runner-up in their tournament. They had a very nice little weekend. 14U Dalton went 3-0, but unfortunately their championship game was rained out. So an undefeated weekend, but an undefeated weekend, but in not championship because they did not get to play in the championship game. 12U Bell went 2-0 on Saturday. Their Sunday got rained out. 12U Bell is up to 9-2-1 on the season, so certainly making their mark as the best 2nd level team in the Bears. Our 3 varsity teams this weekend went 10-0, undefeated combined on the weekend. They are now up to 10-2-1 is 11U Floyd, 14-1 is 12U Floyd, and 13-1 is 14U Dalton. So our varsity teams certainly making their marks. A couple other teams who are playing really well on the year. 13U Floyd is up to an 8-5 record, and 12U Williams, our 3rd level 12U team, is 6-4 on the season. So they're on a nice little run. The 12U depth at the Bears is absolutely magnificent. There was not a bad team at 12U for the Bears, and there's 3 of them, so very impressive. We had 3 more no-hitters this weekend, including a perfect game. Josh Tollier threw a no-hitter on Saturday. He had 5 Ks in that one. Carter Fleck threw a no-hitter on Saturday for 12U Floyd, and Jack Dalton threw a perfect game for 14U Dalton. He's off to a fantastic start to the year. That's now 7 no-hitters and 2 perfect games for the Bears in the month of April. And 6 of the 7 no-hitters were thrown by precision pitching students, and both of the perfect games were by precision pitching students. And let's talk about precision pitching, because precision pitching, the Bears pitching program, off to an absolutely awesome start to the year. This is my program. These are the guys that I've been hyping up all winter long, so let's talk about a couple precision pitchers who are off to very good starts. There's a lot of them, and I was not able to mention all of them. We don't have enough time for it, but here's a couple of them. Josh Tollier has thrown 6 innings with a 1.16 ERA, 10 strikeouts to just 2 walks. He's for 11U Floyd. Jordan Waring, another 11U Floyd guy, he's got a 3.19 ERA, 18 Ks to just 2 walks in 15 1/3 innings. He is their championship game pitcher. Quinn Steinbeck, just 4 innings pitched, but he has a 1.61 ERA with 5 Ks and no walks for 12U Floyd. Evan Lancaster has been the best pitcher for 12U Floyd. He has a 1.9 ERA, 14 2/3 innings. He's just allowed 5 hits in those 14 2/3 innings and has 21 strikeouts. He has definitely made the case for the April Cy Young Award and is off to a nice start for his summer Cy Young campaign aspirations. Lucas Velchek for 13U Floyd has a 1.5 ERA and 4 2/3 innings. He's allowed just 2 hits with 6 strikeouts. Alex Ruppel has a 3.93 ERA with 11 strikeouts to just 2 walks in 10 2/3 innings. Santiago Story is the ace of 14U Dalton. He's thrown 17 2/3 innings with a 2.37 ERA, 18 strikeouts to just 5 walks. Jack Dalton has a 2.8 ERA with 18 Ks to 2 walks in 10 innings pitched. And Evan Osborne, also with 14U Dalton, has a 3.88 ERA with 16 Ks to 4 walks in just 9 innings pitched. Those are all precision pitching guys, and they are dealing to start the year. It's a big part of why the Bears varsity teams have been so successful is because of their pitching staff. And I'll tell you what, this may be the best pitching season in Bears history so far, and we'll look to keep it going. But enough of the pitching talk. Obviously, what brings in the money, what brings in the views is those big hits. So let's get into everybody's favorite segment. Diego Buccio is going to be our hack of the week for his bomb to straight center field. But let's take a look at some of the best hits for the Bears in the last 2 weekends. It's hacking time.
Get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
Yes, I can. Doubt better leave. I'm running with this plan. Pull me, grab me, crabs in the bucket can't have me. I'll be the president one day. January 1st. Oh, you like that gossip? Like you the one drinking what gossip.com. Now I got a word for your tongue. How many Rolling Stones you want? Yeah, I got a brand new spirit speaking and it's done. Woke up on the side of the bed like I won. Talk like the wind in my chest to that sun. G5 in the US to Taiwan. Now who can say that? I wanna play back. Mama knew I was a needle in a haystack. A Bugatti boy, plus Maybach. I got a feeling it's a rap. ASAP.
Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling.
The mountaintop, walk on water, I got power, feel so royal. 1 second, I'ma strike all you. Diamond, platinum, no more for you. That adrenaline, never giving in. Giving up's not an option, gotta get it in. Witness, I got the heart of 20 men. No fear, go to sleep in the lion's den. That glow, that spark, that crown. You're looking at the king of the jungle now. Stronger than ever, can't hold me down. 100 miles gunning from the pitcher's mouth. Straight game face, it's game day. See me running through the crowd, full of melee. No trick plays, I'm Bill Gates. Take a genius to understand me.
Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling. knows I get a good feeling, yeah. Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. I get a good feeling, yeah.
Diego, racket, buddy.
Come on, Diego. You got it, Diego. You know the score?
Yeah!
Yeah!
Yeah, boy!
Bien, Diego.
Good job, Diego. Good job, Diego.
And how about that? The Bears just keep on hitting them. Some absolute missiles in that hack in time, and what a fantastic start to the Bears this season. Be sure to send all of your extra base hits into bearsbaseballnetwork@gmail.com. If you do not send them in, they will not be included in hack in time, so please send all extra base hits. And make sure you got the camera rolling. If you got a player who's up there with a chance to hit a home run, which is the vast majority of Bears, make sure you got your camera rolling because we don't want to miss any of those home runs. We'll be right back. When we come back, Brandon Burnsill is going to join the show, and we've got one of my favorite segments of the year. We're going to take a look at our top 15 prospects. Those are the future of the Bears stars. One of my favorite things to do is look at who's coming in, who's going to be the next Bears star. And we're going to look at our top 15 prospects currently in the Bears. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Callan Bierling from 11U Floyd. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe.
Welcome back to the Bears Baseball Network. Brandon Burnsill joins the show, and we've got one of my favorite segments that we ever do, and that is the top 15 prospects in the Bears. And I'll tell you what, prospects have a nice place in my heart because that is where the Bears build their program. That's what makes us so much different than everybody else, is that when we have an opening on the top team, whether somebody gets hurt or somebody leaves, we fill that hole from the bottom up, from our prospects. So a quick definition of what a prospect is. Anybody who qualifies as a prospect is a player who has fewer than 50 career at-bats on a top team at their age. It also includes any youth prep players. All youth prep players are considered prospect. That is 9 and 10U and also 7 and 8U are all considered prospects. So the way we rank these players is number 1 is overall potential. How good do we see them being long term? And number 2 is how close they are to reaching that potential. So some of our youth prep guys got pushed down a little bit in the list because they've got a couple years before they're going to be really making an impact at the top level for the Bears. So those two things, overall potential and how close they are to reaching that potential, is what makes our top 15. There were a lot of guys. I'll tell you what, when we went into this, we were going to do a top 10, and then we realized there were so many guys that we wanted to talk about. We decided to move it to top 15, and just for time reasons, we couldn't do more than that. I made a list of 40 prospects that I think were worth talking about, and I did want to give some honorable mentions. These are some guys who were just outside of the top 15. Couple 8U guys, Nash Waring and Hudson Graham. Couple 10U guys, George McKinley and Brody Wilburn. 12U, Braden Brown, Dylan Graham, and Joe Gunter. And from 14U, Ethan Mon. Those are some honorable mentions who just missed the top 15. But let's get into our top 15. These are the best 15 prospects in the Bears. These are who me and Bernie see really making an impact going down the line. And I do want to make a quick qualification that this is the BBN top 15 prospects. It does not necessarily reflect what the Bears coaches believe other than Bernie and myself. So these are the BBN top 15 Bears youth prospects. And number 15, Bernie, is Lucas Velchek. Get us started with Velchek.
Started with Lucas Velchek. I mean, this kid, he's in here for his pitching, first of all. I mean, he's a tall, lanky kid, already throws the ball hard at 13U. I mean, this kid starts getting in the weight room, starts getting bigger. This kid, by 17 or 18U, could be touching that 80 mark, and he could be dominant in the future.
Yeah, I mean, a talented arm, a talented pitching type body. Definitely could see Lucas Velchek blossoming into one of the top Bears pitching prospect. I mean, he kind of has a similar body to Elliot Myers, who may be the best pitcher in the Bears right now. So Lucas Velchek kicking things off hot on this list. Our number 14 prospect comes from 12U, and that is Ryan Schneider. He's a guy who I like a lot because of his size, because of his power. He's a guy who I could really see developing into a top power hitter in the organization. He's got a good arm velocity-wise, and he's just raw right now. You know, a lot of these prospects we're going to talk about have come in. They've got good bodies. They are doing nice things with exit velocity. They're working really hard, but they're just raw. They need more experience. Ryan Schneider, a guy who I could certainly see breaking into that top echelon of players at the 12U level. Our number 13 prospect is going to be our first youth prep player. It is Connor Burks. He's a 10U player. He's another one of those guys who's super raw but has come in and has been an extremely hard worker from day one. We've already started to see some 10U action, and he's hit a couple balls really hard, and I could only see him developing further. He's the type of guy who I think could be a big hitting prospect for the Bears. You know, thinking of what we got now, I could see him developing into a premier power bat, you know. Think of somebody like a Matteo Grassi. I think it's that kind of profile that I can see Connor Burks developing into, and I think he is a big prospect for the youth prep level, and we'll see what he becomes. So Connor Burks is our number 13 prospect. Our number 12 prospect is going to come from 11U, and it's somebody who's already broken into the top team but has not broken that 50 at-bat threshold, and it is Alex Lowry.
For Alex Lowry, I mean, this kid's already a good defender everywhere you put him, and I mean, he's already a big kid. He knows how to hit for contact right now, but can he develop power in the future? I think down the line, starts working out a little bit, you know, this kid's going to develop his power, and he's becoming a perennial all-star.
Yeah, I mean, good size, good talent already coming in. He just needs to learn how to play Bears baseball, and I think getting into the weight room this offseason is going to do huge things for him. Our next prospect, another guy coming from 11U, another guy who's already started to make some impact on the top team, and that is Diego Buccio.
Diego Buccio, a.k.a. Big Bopper Diego, hit his first 2 home runs, I think it was 2 weekends ago.
Yep.
And, I mean, this guy's the limit for his power. I mean, this is one of the guys that I think Kennedy believes in a lot, filling that role. It's possibly like a 5 or 6 there in the future. He's going to play a big role, and he's going to keep developing that power.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the premier power prospects in the entire organization. Another guy who's just super raw, and he's one of those guys, man, that he could mold into absolutely anything. So sky's the limit for Diego Buccio. If he keeps working hard, he could definitely be a contender to lead the Bears in home runs someday. Our number 10 prospect is going to come from 12U, and it is Jacob Mon. He's a guy who's already broken into that top team, and he's done a lot of different things this year for the top team. Mostly has been a defensive replacement and also reliever, but I think there's a big sky to his limit as a hitter. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's got a good swing right now. He's looking to develop power. He's already got some solid contact skills. He's already got some solid plate discipline skills, and he's a guy who could very easily develop into a premier infielder with also a little bit of pop and also hit for a high average. You know, he's one of those guys that I think really could be anything. You know, with his work ethic, and with his body, I think Jacob Mon is definitely a top infield prospect for 12U, and that's why he's our number 10 prospect. Our number 9 prospect is going to come from 8U, and it is Blake Nickerson. Of course, you know the name. It's a household name in the Bears organization, and I'll tell you what, with his name alone, he was going to be a top 10 prospect on this list, but he's even justified it with his talent and with his work ethic. I think there's no doubt Blake Nickerson is going to be a star. The only reason he's number 9 on this list and not number 1 is because he's only 7 years old, and he's still got a long time before he's really going to be making an impact at a top team Bears level when he gets to 11U and 12U. He's got a long way to go. That's the only reason he's not higher on this list. But the talent's there, the work ethic is there, and obviously he's got that Nickerson name that has been so successful in the Bears organization. So Blake Nickerson, if you have a chance to stop by an 8U game, certainly check out Blake and his teammates. A lot of talent on that team, and I think Blake is a superstar to be. And he's going to be a guy, when we do this list every year, he's going to be climbing up and up it, and he will be a future number 1 prospect someday. Our number 8 prospect is going to come from 14U, and it is Sam Dollins. He's a guy who's broken into that Dalton roster, and another guy with elite power. I mean, he's another guy who I could see being in the contest to hit a bunch of home runs when he gets into high school and when he starts building his body. He's very skinny right now. He needs to put on some size. He needs to continue to work hard, but I think there's enough there for Sam Dollins to make himself into a starter in that Dalton lineup down the road. And power is definitely very high for him. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it's our top 7 prospects here on the BBN. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Santiago Story from 14 Dalton. If you want your highlights featured, send them to the email below.
Welcome back to the Bears Baseball Network. We've got our top 7 prospects in the Bears, and I'll tell you what, a lot of these guys, if we did this list even a week from now, would not qualify because several of these guys just barely fall under that under 50 career plate appearances on a top team. So these guys are some guys who are going to graduate as prospects, but certainly guys worth talking about. Let's start with number 7. It's a 12U Bell player, and it is Mason Geddes.
So with Mason Geddes, this kid, he's a really athletic kid, has good contact numbers, has a home run this year. He's a plus defender. If I'm looking at like a ceiling comparison for him, I look at someone like Brandon Brunette. Brandon Brunette's going to be an 18U Floyd player this summer. He has a lot of the same attributes Mason Geddes does. And yeah, if Mason Geddes turns out to be Brandon Brunette, that is a massive success.
Yeah, definitely. I could see the comparison. Good plate discipline, athletic body, plus defense. I think he's got to develop a little bit of power to meet that Brandon Brunette comparison, but I think it's definitely realistic. We've already seen him at a home run on a big field, and I could see him developing into that type of power. For him, it's just going to be where can he break into this outfield. Obviously, it's going to be a year or two where he really meets his true potential, and by then, who knows what the outfield situation looks like. But I definitely think Mason Geddes is a top prospect and is certainly a guy to look out for in the future. Our number 6 prospect in the Bears is our top youth prep prospect, and it is Harrison Bleibom. We mentioned him early in the show. He hit his first career Bears home run. And I'll tell you what, this guy is a top-of-the-line power prospect. I mean, you're looking at a Kennedy Floyd with the bat. Maybe not that type of defender, although, sky's the limit. Who knows what he could become, 4 or 5 years from now. But I think it's that type of bat. I mean, it's an elite power bat. He needs to develop, into that good plate discipline. He needs to develop into those more consistent contact skills. But the body certainly is there, the power potential certainly is there, and the hard work certainly is there. He's exactly what the Bears are looking for, big body, hard work, and I definitely think Harrison Bleibom is going to be a future home run leader at some point in his Bears career. A fantastic player, and there's a reason he is our number 1 youth prep prospect and the number 6 prospect in general. Let's move into our top 5, the top 5 prospect in the Bears. And again, several of these guys, I'd say at least 3 of them are very soon going to lose that prospect qualification. So very shortly going to be on this top 5 list. And when we revisit it at the end of the summer, we'll see what these guys are doing. But our number 5 prospect, he's a guy that Bernie and I have liked for a long time. He's a guy who's been a continuous hard worker. Our number 5 prospect is Wyatt Yount.
I've always liked this kid, but I don't know. If you'd asked me a year ago today, this kid probably wouldn't be on the list, dude. He was not good a year ago. But like you said about Harrison, the kid, a big body kid, works hard, wasn't free swing, wasn't pitching. And now this year he's come out, he's hit 2 home runs, and he's making a massive impact on the Driscoll team. And you're looking at it, he could be possibly the next guy. If Dalton guy gets out or gets injured somehow, he could be the next guy called to Dalton. So Wyatt Yount.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's shown that he can play multiple different positions on the infield. He started to step into that power. For several guys on this list, we've said they could get into some power. And Wyatt Yount has started to do that. You look at the weight training over the winter. He's already got 2 home runs. There's a good chance he's going to end up with a couple more. And I definitely think the power potential is starting to get there. It's elite plate discipline. He walks a lot, does not strike out a lot. And I think the biggest question mark for him is where does he fit in defensively if he were to move into Dalton, because currently he really only plays first base for Driscoll, and obviously he's played third and a little bit of second in the past. But I think it's one of those things where these things work themselves out. Usually if you can hit, they find a place for you on the field, and I definitely think Wyatt Yount is a guy with some long-term aspirations at that age group. Our number 4 prospect is going to come from 11U. He's our actual number 2 prospect at 11U, but number 4 in total, and it is Colin Dean.
All right, looking at Colin Dean, this kid, he's a elite defender, not even plus. He's an elite defender no matter where you put him. Catcher, he played the infield and outfield. I mean, this kid's great everywhere, has an elite contact numbers, but I mean, the only thing this kid's missing is some sort of power, right? In a year, this kid's gonna start working out and establish strength, and maybe this kid could turn into a decent power hitter. And if you can do that, I think we could be talking about Colin Dean possibly moving up this list even to number 1. And yeah.
Yeah. Colin Dean, I agree. You know, he's the type of guy who strikes me as like a 2020 Nathan Sandler type profile where it's elite defense. Obviously, Nathan Sandler played the outfield and Colin Dean can kind of play all over, but it's elite defense, it's elite contact with extra base hit power, even though maybe it's not home run power. You know, maybe Colin Dean could exceed that in terms of the power, but that 2020 Nathan Sandler season, I mean, that sets the bar as a really, really good year. Nathan Sandler was a top 15 player in the Bears that year, and I think Colin Dean could certainly meet that prospect with his plate discipline, with his contact skills, and with his defense. Colin Dean certainly deserving of a top 4 spot on this list. Our number 3 prospect is going to come from 12U, and it is Logan Payne, another guy who's a household name in the Bears. Obviously, his older brother Reese is a middle-of-the-order hitter for 16U Floyd. And Logan Payne has another guy with elite power. I mean, we're talking about a guy who came in with some power, and it's about developing that contact consistency. It's about putting on size, and it's about developing defense for Logan Payne. Currently plays second base. I could see him long-term moving to the outfield. And I think the power is already there. It's about what can he do to develop size and develop contact skills. Certainly one of the elite prospects on 12U Bell and a definite long-term prospect for 12U as a whole. Getting into our top 2, it was a tight race for top 2. And our number 2 prospect is going to be from 12U, and it is Aaron Knoll.
All right, so we got to be honest here. When we made our separate list, this guy was my number 1 guy. You know, I've talked about him all season. I mean, he's already having a massive season. But if I'm going to compare this guy to someone, like his ceiling in a couple years, I'm going to look at someone like Mac Floyd. Call me crazy. I know Mac's a superstar in his own right. But if you look at both players, they both have plus contact. They both get a lot more power out of their bodies than you think they would. They're both very strong kids. And they're both just plus defenders in their position. Now, is Aaron Knoll going to become Mac Floyd in the outfield? Oh, I don't know. That's a big thing to live up to. But give him a couple years, right? I think this Aaron Knoll could turn out to be a lot like Mac in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's a very similar comparison. You know, what they lack in height, they make up for in strength. I mean, they both have surprising power in their bat than when you just look at their body. And Aaron Knoll, you can see flashes of him being an elite defender. There's certain times where he gets a break on the ball, and with his closing speed, he gets there, and it's like, wow, that is the ceiling. But he's got to learn how to do that every single time. And the plate discipline as well is very similar to Mac Floyd. Mac has a really good eye at the plate, as does Aaron, and I think it's a very good ceiling comparison. Mac Floyd, obviously a top 5, if not top 3 player in the organization right now. I think Aaron Knoll, as a ceiling, I think that's a really good comparison for him as that type of player. He's got to continue to work hard to meet that ceiling, but I think that if everything goes right, we could be talking about Aaron Knoll as a top 10 player in the Bears at some point. Our number 1 prospect in the organization right now, this is a guy who is really, you know, he explains everything that the Bears are about. He's a very hard worker. He came into the Bears as the best player on a rec team. That's exactly, you know, the type of players that the Bears have success with. He has come in, worked hard, gotten into extra programs, and really you see him up there every night of the week, and that is ZZ Garcia. We've already talked about him a lot, and I'll be honest, you know, going into this year, I didn't know how much we were going to get from ZZ on the top team in terms of production. I thought this was going to be a year where ZZ kind of puts his head down, nobody talks about him, and he just gets better. But we're already starting to see some signs from him that he has turned into that top-tier player. He's hit some balls this year as hard as anybody. Besides Brendan Bass and Jordan Waring, he's hit some balls really hard this year. It's mostly been low-line drives and on the ground, but you could see if he put those balls in the air, you could see power developing. I think he's an elite defender, and if I were going to make a ceiling case for ZZ Garcia, this is absolute ceiling. I could see him being a Liam Risley type player where it's elite contact, it is premier defense, and it is some power. You know, not elite power numbers, but certainly giving you more than 0 home runs, you know, a respectable extra base hit number. That's, I think, the absolute ceiling for ZZ, and obviously Liam Risley was a top 2 player in the organization in his prime, and that's what I think ZZ Garcia could be if everything goes right. Now, maybe a more realistic, a more average outcome for ZZ Garcia could be something like Lucas Levy, and another guy who was a top 10 player in the Bears last season, plus contact, you know, not home run power, but extra base hit power, and above average defense. That's what I think ZZ Garcia, his floor could be, is that type of player. And I'm very excited to see what ZZ could do going forward. He's already ahead of where I thought he'd be this season. You know, I thought, again, he was going to spend this season mostly on burn, mostly just learning how to play Bears baseball, learning how to kind of come into his own skill set. But he's really impressed me early in the season. I'm excited to look back at the end of the summer and see what ZZ did over the course of the year. But I definitely think he has the potential to be a top five player on 11U Floyd. Even next spring, I think he could be there, and I think we're talking about him as a top 15 player in the organization in a couple years. So ZZ Garcia is our number one prospect. Again, all these guys on this list, really we're talking about the next crop of Bear players. You know, some of the guys who used to be top prospects. Think of guys like Carson Donsbach. Think of guys like Brendan Bass. You know, obviously Brendan Bass, a superstar now, a top 5 player in the Bears. He was just a prospect a year ago. You know, if we would have had BBN, you would have heard us talking about Brendan Bass and Carson Donsbach and guys like even, you know, Jackson Dormeyer a couple years ago was a top prospect. So this is really where the next crop of Bears come from. It's my favorite segment to do, and certainly a lot of elite names on this list. I'll run through it one more time. From 15 to 1, Lucas Velchek, Ryan Schneider, Connor Burks, Alex Lowry, Diego Buccio, Jacob Mon, Blake Nickerson, Sam Dollins, Mason Geddes, Harrison Blaybaum, Wyatt Yount, Colin Dean, Logan Payne, Aaron Knoll, and ZZ Garcia. That is our top 15 prospects. We are going to make a new top 15 prospects list toward the end of the summer when a couple of these guys, you know, for example, Aaron Knoll is just barely below 50 at-bats. He'll probably break 50 career at-bats this weekend, and he'll no longer be prospect eligible. Colin Dean, same way. Alex Lowry, same way. So we'll make a new top 15 prospects list toward the end of the summer, and then, of course, when we get our crop of new players, we'll make a new one in the fall. So be certain to look out for these 15, and it's an elite list, and I think these are where the big stars from the Bears are going to come from in the future. That's going to do it for this episode of the Bears Baseball Network. You're going to want to tune into next week because we're going to have our April awards in our next episode next Friday. So be sure to tune in. A lot of Bears baseball action this weekend, but that's going to do it for this episode of the Bears Baseball Network. We will talk to you all next week.